do you do if there are two investigations underway into the origins of the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election? Well, if you're Attorney General William Barr, you order up a third. Investigating the investigators, take 3 was revealed in new reporting from the New York Times. Quote, Attorney General William Barr has assigned the top federal prosecutor in Connecticut to examine the origins of the Russia investigation. That's according to 2 people familiar with the matter, a move that President Trump has long called for, but that could anger law enforcement officials who insist that scrutiny of the Trump campaign was lawful. Donald Trump gave Barr's latest move 2 thumbs up and sideswiped his sitting FBI director, Chris Wray, while he was at it.
You know what? I am so proud of our Attorney General that he is looking into it. I think it's great. I did not know about it.
Do you still have confidence in Christopher Wray after he said he wouldn't exactly call it?
Well, I didn't understand his answer because I thought the Attorney General answered it perfectly. So I certainly didn't understand that answer. I thought it was a ridiculous answer.
Wray should consider himself warned that serving as FBI director during the Trump presidency can be a lonely proposition. But if you stay strong, your superiors at DOJ will have your back, right? Well, not this one. Former Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein had this to say about Wray's predecessor, Jim Comey. Quote, the former director is a partisan pundit selling books and earning speaking fees while speculating about the strength of my character and the fate of my immortal soul. That is disappointing. Speculating about souls is not a job for police and prosecutors. But wearing a wire to record the president and whipping votes for the 25th Amendment is? And that is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. With us at the table, former director of the CIA, John Brennan, a senior national security analyst for NBC News. Elise Jordan, former aide to the George W. Bush White House and State Department, and the host of Saturday Night Politics here on MSNBC, Donnie Deutsch, plus former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and former U.S. Attorney Harry Litman, and Frank Figliuzzi, former Assistant Director for Counterintel at the FBI. Frank, I have to start with you. So striking to see Trump take aim today at Christopher Wray. He's done it on Twitter a couple of times. Christopher Wray's testimony last week standing out because it stands in contrast to that of the Attorney General. But on the heels of Attorney General Barr appointing a third investigation, a review into the origins of the Russia investigation, Donald Trump sounding very emboldened against Christopher Wray, who may be the closest thing we have to a guardrail in federal law enforcement.
I'm thankful for an FBI director that's doing the right thing, speaking the truth. It's just not in the FBI culture, Nicole, to turn away from the truth and the facts. If you ask an FBI agent, an FBI director about something, you're going to get a straight answer if he can answer it at all. And so what we're seeing really is a clash of cultures. We're seeing the Trump administration and their way versus the FBI way. And that's what America needs to understand. Now, is Wray's tenure going to be short-lived because of this? Well, it's quite possible. But those are the people we need in the position of FBI director, speaking the truth and illustrating the FBI's motto, which is fidelity, bravery, integrity. We're not seeing that in the Attorney General. We're certainly not seeing it in Rod Rosenstein, a real disappointment, and I think showing his true colors and even further showing that clash of culture between truth, rule of law, and partisan politics.
Director Brennan, last night, the New York Times breaking the news that a third review was underway of the origins of the Russia investigation. You were in the U.S. government as our country's CIA director when the counterintelligence investigation commenced. What do you make of the fact that it's being reviewed by a third set of investigators?
Well, John Durham is a very well-respected individual, and I believe he's going to do this. I'm hoping he's going to do it the right way. I believe that Attorney General Barr was going to carry out his duties correctly, but I was mistaken there. But I do believe it's important that there be an understanding about just how strongly predicated that investigation was. I was there in the summer of '16, and it was very well predicated to launch this counterintelligence investigation about what the Russians were doing to interfere in our election and who among American citizens might have been working with them.
So, is there anything? I take your point that that Durham is a professional, but is there anything unprofessional about John Huber or IG Horowitz, who are already doing the same investigation?
Well, I think there have been instances in the past where an IG is looking at an issue, and also there's going to be other investigations. I'm hoping they're going to be able to work somewhat collaboratively together. I do hope that this review that Mr. Durham is going to do will be taken care of quite quickly. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there is ample evidence to justify what the FBI and the intelligence community did in the summer of '16.
Harry, is there any sense that the Justice Department can just take on an infinite number of separate parallel investigations? I mean, this is the third. The Huber investigation was announced by Jeff Sessions in a letter to look at the origins of the Russia probe. The Inspector General is looking at some of the FISA applications and the match that lit that probe. Can the Justice Department manage three separate investigations into the same investigation?
It's not a matter of management. It's a matter of impact. You know, the Attorney General wants to know what happened. Fine. But when you do this a third and even a fourth time, because remember, the Horowitz initial report also delved into this, and there are no facts that seem to be a mystery at this point, as John says, and really not law either. So the worry is that overall, when you get to 2, 3, 4, you get the sense of we're going to continue till we get the answer we want. And then it's also, Durham is a pro, but he's not the fastest working pro. So there's a real prospect that from now through the election, the talking point has now been delivered to Trump that the investigators are being investigated. And even if he does the right thing, and as he should, finds no culpable conduct, it still will have its effect during the election season.
Let me play for you, Frank Figliuzzi, and I know you know all the players here. I want your thoughts on the development. But let me play for you Attorney General Barr under questioning from Senator Harris around this topic.
Has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir?
The president or anybody else?
Seems you would remember something like that and be able to tell us.
Yeah, but I'm trying to grapple with the word suggest. I mean, there have been discussions of matters out there that they have not asked me to open an investigation, but
Perhaps they've suggested?
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
Hinted?
I don't know.
Inferred? You don't know. Okay.
Frank Figliuzzi, it would sound to me like he either knew or had already asked for another review of the origins of the Russia investigation when he was facing questions from Senator Kamala Harris.
Yeah, you could play this video at Quantico, Virginia, at the FBI Academy to a new agents class on interrogation, because this is textbook. This is textbook of evasion and deception right there. And here's the problem: there's no accountability for that. We're talking about opening investigations, using U.S. attorneys to do something the Inspector General should be doing. But who's investigating Barr? He won't show up. He won't respond to subpoenas. He's not going to the House, and so he gets to skate on that, while everyone else, including investigators under him at the FBI, get investigated. So this is a problem.
Director Brennan, I want to play for you sort of the three voices on this question of spying. And I want to ask you if it's your understanding that any of your conduct or decision making is under investigation as well. Let's watch first.
I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. It's a big deal.
Hard to believe it could have happened, but it did. There was spying in my campaign, and his answer was a very accurate one.
When FBI agents conduct investigations against alleged mobsters, suspected terrorists, other criminals, do you believe that they're engaging in spying when they're following FBI investigative policies and procedures?
Well, that's not the term I would use.
Who uses the word spying to discuss authorized lawful surveillance on a counterintelligence probe, other than Sean Hannity?
Well, William Barr, clearly, and I think Donald Trump as well.
Why?
Well, I think they're trying to imply and to really, indicate that there was misuse of authorities. That was not the case. Does CIA spy? Yes. Do we spy against our foreign adversaries? Yes. Do we spy against domestic individuals? No, we do not. We work very closely with the FBI. And when the Russians were trying to interfere in that election and to change the outcome of it in their favor, we, CIA and FBI, worked very collaboratively so that we could have that ability to see what the Russians were doing and who they were working with. So when William Barr said spying, it clearly indicated that there was something that was inappropriate, if not illegal. Nobody used the term spying when they're referring to legitimate, predicated, authorized investigative actions on the part of the FBI.
So why do you think he uses it? Is it taunting? Does it signal to the intelligence community that he's coming for you? Does it signal that he's watched too much Sean Hannity? What does that word mean inside the intelligence community?
Well, I think he's playing to Mr. Trump. I think throughout that testimony, it was clear that what Mr. Barr was doing was trying to say things and to characterize things in a manner that was not only consistent with what Mr. Trump has said, but also very supportive of it. So when he responded to Kamala Harris and to others on these issues, he thought about it, and they asked him, was there spying? And he said, well, yeah, there was. Well, to me, that really suggests that he already is, looking at things that really did not happen. It was predicated. It was legal. It was authorized. Now, if they want to take a look at the FISA practices and other things, that's legitimate. There is a question about whether or not there's going to be all these competing investigations and how that's going to suck the air out of the whole environment. But it's clear in my mind that what Mr. Barr was suggesting was that the FBI was engaged in politically motivated spying against one of the candidates.
And let's just be super clear for our viewers. I mean, a FISA application, and I remember talking to a Justice Department official at the time that Devin Nunes was trying to declassify the FISA application over the objections of the FBI director. Christopher Wray was there. This DOJ official said, bring it on. This is an incorruptible piece of the Justice Department. These are so scrubbed. These are so scrutinized. These are slowed down, frankly, by the bureaucracy. And Rod Rosenstein's signature is on the reauthorizations. And the standard for reauthorizing a FISA is even higher than they have to prove fruitful. So just once and for all, what will they find in 1, 2, 3 examinations, reviews, investigations of the origins of the Russian investigation?
I don't know. They may try to be dissecting the language that was in the FISA application. But as you point out...
But what was the concern? What was going on?
I think they're just trying to, demonstrate that there was, problems with what the Obama administration did as far as it pursued this investigation. But as you point out, it went through a rigorous due process within the Department of Justice, the FBI. It was approved by the FISA court. It went through all of those steps. And now if they look back at it in 2020, are they going to find that there was something that should have been said differently, whatever they might? But I think that's what they're trying to do, is to uncover something that they will misrepresent as being part of this deep state effort to try to undermine Donald Trump's election.
Harry, Rod Rosenstein's signatures on one of those FISA reauthorizations, he's had a very bizarre evolution from being someone who was described as in tears or near tears in 3 separate press accounts, and someone who was willing to wear a wire to record Donald Trump, who was whipping votes for the 25th Amendment, which is the only reported incident of any attempted coup that I've read about, now to someone who quotes Donald Trump on the question of the rule of law and who went after Jim Comey in prepared remarks last night. What do you make of Rod Rosenstein's evolution?
Yeah, or is it a real evolution? I mean, in general, in his time in office, he's had lapses. He let things through. He kind of played ball. Now, he was under a lot of pressure, but he both begins and ends with really questionable conduct. And it's not simply, this sort of thin-skinned sniping as if there's already a war of words for history. But what about this very final act, having overseen the investigation, of validating what seems to be a incredible or impossible to justify judgment by the Attorney General that everything was fine on the obstruction side. So he is exiting in something of a cloud, and I think already trying to, wrestle with his role in history.
And we'll see. We'll monitor closely to see if he sells any books or gives any speeches.
Right.
Donnie, we've got some breaking news tailor-made for you. The New York Times up with the story just before we came onto the air. House panel investigates obstruction claims against Trump lawyers. From Nick Vandos and Maggie Haberman at the New York Times. Let me read some of it to you. The House Intel Committee is investigating whether lawyers tied to President Trump and his family helped obstruct the panel's inquiry into Russian election interference by shaping false testimony. The line of inquiry stems from claims made by the president's former personal lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, who told Congress earlier this year that the lawyers in question helped edit false testimony that he provided to Congress. This is a new development to an allegation that Cohen has made, but clearly the investigations birthed by Cohen's testimony and Cohen's hours and hours with federal investigators and SDNY and Mueller live on.
Yeah. Michael was very explicit about that as far as it related to the Moscow Tower, that he says they edited it. It's not the way he did it. And it was one of the frustrations Michael had about going away, what he felt was such a stiff sentence, that so much of what he has done and given has given birth and will give birth to many investigations, and I actually think some incredibly damning investigations, that he was frustrated that although he initially didn't sign on as a full cooperation agreement, his testimony has gleaned so much more for the oversight committees, yet did not seem to get any points.
I know he's your friend, but their phone's in jail. I want to ask you about this testimony. What does he's alleging that the president's lawyers changed, and it would seem that the House Intel Committee is now alleging obstruction of justice. Is this something Cohen testified to?
Cohen testified that there was editing. He once again he was not talking about obstruction. He's not a lawyer, he's not a judge. But that clearly that was something, and he testified before Congress on it.
So, Elise, the committee sent requests to four of the president's lawyers, Jay Sekulow, Alan Futerfas, Alan Garden, and Abby Lowell, who represents Ivanka Trump. They'd all signed under a joint defense agreement. It would seem that to any degree that we thought that Cohen heading to prison or Mueller wrapping up was the end of anything, it may have just been the end of the beginning. These investigations, you've also got Richard Burr, the Senate Intel Committee, subpoenaing Donald Trump Jr. I mean, it would seem that the White House has entered the beginning of the next phase of all these congressional investigations.
Well, the coda of the Mueller report was essentially, now it's up to Congress.
Right.
And what I wonder about in this story is also, yet again, it talks about how the Mueller report gave some credibility to what Michael Cohen said, didn't completely accept it all, completely, but then they didn't compel Jay Sekulow also to testify. Why did so many people just not have to go and talk to Bob Mueller and his team? It still just baffles me that, Donald Trump himself did not face intense pressure to have to go and speak himself.
Well, he did give those very cogent answers.
Oh, yeah. I can do
there was a lot of pressure.
I can do well in a take-home
I think
test,
there was
too.
timing also. There was a proctor there, so I think it was under a lot of pressure.
Frank, you want to jump in and try to answer Elise's question?
Yeah, I wish I knew the answers to this. Look, there's going to be inquiry after inquiry here, but here's what we're about to see. We're going to see all of the Trump lawyers, all of the Trump team completely obstruct attempts to get to the truth here. The lawyers you just named aren't about to show up on the Hill. They're going to claim executive privilege. They're going to claim attorney-client privilege. They're going to say they had a joint defense agreement that covers all of this. And there's a much larger question, Nicole, which is we are facing a battle between three equal branches of government, and we don't know who's going to win. All of this is going to end up in the Supreme Court.
Harry, let me give you the last word and read you a little more from this breaking news. Among other things, it appears that your clients may have reviewed, shaped, and edited the false statement that Cohen submitted to the committee, including causing the omission of material facts. The Intelligence Committee's chairman, the Representative Adam Schiff of California, wrote to lawyers representing the four men in a May 3rd letter obtained by the New York Times. This seems like a very clear escalation of at least the House Intel Committee taking very seriously their oversight responsibilities. What happens next?
Yeah, they're throwing down the gauntlet. So I agree with Frank. This will all proceed to litigation. This one in particular will be litigation under the crime fraud exception. That is, they're not going to be looking to charge them. They're going to be looking to say, your attorney-client privilege, your executive-client privilege, it doesn't exist. It's vitiated because what you were doing was a crime. We're not charging you with a crime, but you can't keep that material privilege. That's why you'll have to testify. Likewise with Trump Jr., who has been suggested he's cooperating. Notice that he's studiously avoided saying anything since he gave the testimony that was probably false to Congress. He'll now be on the hot seat, and he's avoided all efforts, but he'll be at a real quandary and will probably wind up taking the Fifth Amendment.
Let me just make sure I understand. I feel like I should have gone and earned a law degree to cover this administration, but let me just make sure I understand what you mean. Why would they not? Why would they give them the assurance that no one will be charged with the crime if they uncover criminality?
Well, because it's just that they're not they're not investigating, and to charge them with a crime, they would have to rely on the U.S. Attorney and the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice will never do it, and they take the position, in fact, that they don't do it. But they can say, can Congress, you can't keep this privilege because it essentially was a crime of obstruction, and the crime fraud exception comes in now and means the communications aren't privileged. That's what they will argue to the court.
And so we learn more about the steps, the incredible steps they took to lie and keep everything hidden, and looks like their obstruction is their modus operandi.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.